How many employees do you have right now?
About 100.
In all the locations?
Yeah.
I mean, you have like what? So 8 locations or?
7.5 with the wine bar here. We're in the same building as the Southdown Coffee Glen Cove.
It's pretty impressive how you're able to run 7 locations. What inspires the growth?
I think it's...
Welcome back to New York's Business Podcast. My name is Jacob Restituto. I am the host and owner of Restituto Media, a full-service video and photo company here based on Long Island. Today I'm joined with Mark Boccard, owner of Southdown Coffee and Otherside Wine, the wine bar. So really looking forward to that's actually where we're filming today. A little side note, super cool spot. We're in Glen Cove. You have a couple locations, which I want to talk to you about, but we're in the Glen Cove location today, and the place is beautiful. So if you have not been to the Glen Cove location, which I hadn't, I had been to only the Northport and Huntington ones, definitely check out the Glen Cove location. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here.
So for people that aren't super familiar with you and your story, can you kind of give a backstory on who you are and how you got into the industry?
Yeah, so I grew up in Huntington as far as who I am. So I am a Long Island local, and I was, finished college, became a English teacher, was in education for a little while, and thought that that might be a path, and went to graduate school for writing and was sort of not loving all the job options there, so kind of took a left turn, started working in coffee shops. I did kind of get my start on the West Coast. Went to grad school in Oakland. I went to live in Seattle and got my first coffee job in Seattle. Then started working in Brooklyn in coffee shops, got a job in a roastery. So one thing sort of led to another, and rather than coffee just being like a way to pay the bills, it kind of became something I liked to do.
So from what I'm hearing from that is you went to some of the best coffee spots in the world, which is Seattle, Brooklyn, everywhere. Both of those places are very well known for their coffee and their typical hipster kind of great coffee, great vibe locations, and learn from the best. So that being said, how do you make the transition from education into coffee though?
I think it's just like one of those things where I always liked coffee shops, and then when I needed a job, and I grew up working in, like, my aunt owned a deli. I always worked in like the deli, a pizzeria, stuff like that. So I was always kind of food centric. So that was like kind of an easy thing to get into.
So tell me about Southdown, because Southdown came before Otherside, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Like way before, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about Southdown. What was the first location? How did you find the location, and how did you expand?
Yeah, so my first location is the Southdown Huntington location, which actually takes the name from that part of town. I did grow up, I went to Southdown Elementary School. My family's very much from around there. My great-grandfather actually bought that property in the early 20th century. My grandfather built those stores. And so some of my dad and his siblings, like, they are still the owners. And so that's how I was able to secure a space for my original concept.
Wow.
So yeah, 2014, we opened in Huntington.
At what point do you say, hey, this is going well enough, I want to open a second location or a third location? Or
Yeah, my first thought was that maybe I could still kind of own the first location. I always, in the back of my mind, said this could be cool to do more. But I also was like, maybe this is a way that I can have some extra income, so that if I'm living as like a writer, artist, musician type, I can pay the bills from this business and then pursue things that I love to do. But as I said before, all those dreams died, and then you just move on to things that make sense. And I was having fun running it. I met a local person who was interested in bringing me to Oyster Bay. And so he arranged for me to meet a landlord there. And I love the space. The Oyster Bay store is pretty cool. It's the building's from 1901, right in the center of town. Just has a lot of charm. And it was very small, so it was kind of low risk. So that kind of like encouraged me to take the plunge.
can you tell me the progression of the stores? So it was Huntington, Oyster Bay.
Yeah, so Huntington in 2014, Oyster Bay, I want to say 2017. Then this location, Glen Cove, I had signed a lease in may have been late 2018 or early 2019. And we were making some good progress on the construction, and then the pandemic hit. So that slowed a lot down. I was also caught in the national grid gas shortage, which some people may remember from 2019. There was like drama over a pipeline, and this is our roastery location, so that was not great. So it took us about a year and a half to get open here. We opened in November of 2020. In that year and a half or so of trying to build out this store, I happened to be in Northport Village getting ice cream with my in-laws, and I saw the space available next to Lick's Ice Cream in Northport, and so called the landlord, and within about 2 weeks I had the lease signed, and within 6 weeks we got it open. So it was like a dramatic contrast of slow and fast, pandemic, weird stuff. So I ended up opening here in November, and that was 1 month after we opened Northport.
Wow.
So Northport and Glen Cove 2020, and then Patchogue, Port Jefferson around the same time in 2022. And this year we opened in Point Lookout, or last year, 2024, in Point Lookout next to Long Beach. Some people don't know where that is. And the wine bar opened also, same thing where it was like two things opening almost a week apart or something this past spring. So that was insane.
So I want to hear about the structure of the ownership. Do you franchise them, or you just own them and then you have managers?
Yeah, I'm the pretty much the sole owner. My parents have 1%, which was like a formality in the early days so I could get a business loan. And
That's amazing.
yeah, and then I do have an employee stock option. So
Wow.
our employees are 10% owners of the company. It doesn't like, when you're filing taxes and stuff, you don't declare them as owners, but essentially they get equity in the business. So if there's ever a cash event, like a sale or an acquisition or go public or something like that, they would be able to sell their shares at that point.
So it's more of like a buyout option as opposed to like a every year profit option, correct? Like they're not getting profit on
Right,
every
yeah, there's
year.
no like dividends or anything
Yeah.
for it, but yeah.
That's really, so is that something that they enrolled in, or is that something that all employees have, or how does that work?
It's we make it available to like management level.
Okay.
So store management is where that begins, and yeah, it's it's a small piece of equity, but I think it makes you feel like you're working for something, and you might 10, 20 years down the road get a check.
Yeah, very cool. So how is that structured in the sense of like 10% for all the managers, correct? Like if there's 10 managers, is that 1% each, or how does that work?
The 10%, it's definitely smaller portions than that. It's divided up into shares. I think there's 10 million shares, and they might get like 1,000 shares, and it's like a vesting structure. It also depends on your like role, how long you've been with the company. There's some variation there, but so it's a vesting structure. The first year they call it a cliff, where if you don't last a full year, you don't get any of the equity. And then after the full year, you get 25% of your equity package. And each day it vests another small percentage until 4 years, you get 100%.
Wow.
And after 4 years, you can walk away and you'd still have your interest.
This is really fascinating. I'd love to hear more about like where did this idea come from, or what inspired you to go about this route?
Yeah, it was something I always wanted to do. I mean, we are like we have no investors. We're not like a private equity company or anything like that. So part of the flip side of in like growing through so-called bootstrapping is you are always allotting a certain amount of your net income to growth. And so I felt like it was kind of a nice trade-off with people who are here while we're growing to say like, okay, maybe this company's not like fully maximizing every penny they can pay me, because growth is an ideal that we have. And also, asking them to get on board with growth, because I think it leads to better salaries anyway. It's a win-win, but you have to have a little more of a long-term perspective. I think it just set everyone on that, or set management people on that like 4-year clock, which I think if you stay at Southdown for 4 years, you see a lot of growth.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, 4 years ago, half the places you just mentioned weren't even open.
Right.
Or maybe 5, but still, yeah.
Yeah, and the roles that are available to you, there's a lot of people who came in with no experience who are now managing cafes or even higher up in the company. So, yeah.
How many employees do you have right now?
About 100.
In all the locations?
Yeah.
That's less than I would have thought, to be honest with you.
Less?
I mean, 100 employees is still a lot of employees, for sure. But,
It's a lot, yeah.
I mean, you have like what? I didn't count, but so 8 locations or?
7.5 with the wine bar here. We're
Yeah.
in the same building as the Southdown Coffee Glen Cove.
Yeah.
So, but it does kind of run like an 8th location.
Yeah. I say that because, I mean, it's pretty impressive how you're able to run 7 locations with that. I mean, that's only really like 11, 12 people per location.
Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
In the sense of, I find that businesses can be rather wasteful with employees, or, in the sense of way too many employees, not enough shifts available. And then on the flip side, my wife works for a company where there's not enough people to work. So then it's like, you're working short-staffed, and
Yeah.
which is another problem in itself.
Yeah.
But what inspires the growth? Why continue wanting to grow? So the reason I asked that question is I've heard 2 different sides of the story, in the sense of I've heard business owners say, I want to make my one location the absolute best location, and we don't intend to grow outside of this location. We're just going to invest here. And then I've heard the complete opposite, where say, hey, we want to expand, we want to increase our footprint on the island. And I don't think either is wrong. So I think it just depends on the business owner. So I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yeah. So I guess I'll say that I have a little bit of both perspectives, because with this wine bar, Otherside, literally the other side of the building, this is a one-off. This will never happen. People messaging me on social media, open in Port Jeff. It will never happen. We can't like recreate the magic. I just know in my heart this is this spot. Maybe one day we'll do some other concept, food-wise, but this is a one-off. Southdown, I think it's just sort of the nature of the business, because we're in the roasting business, and when you're in the roasting business, volume is really important. And in order to hit some economy of scale, you either need to be doing a lot of wholesale, or and brick and mortar sales, or mail order or something.
Where does the predominant of your sales come from?
Cafe sales.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then wholesale after that?
Yeah, everything else is a little bit of an afterthought with us. We love our wholesale accounts, but we also don't have like a sales force. We don't really put any effort into sales there. So, we have an online platform, like you can order on the web. So right on the website, and that generates a surprising amount of income, just like people ordering, 12-ounce bags. I see a lot of people, like names I know of ex-customers who may have moved, and then they're just like ordering 5 pounds at a time. So it's fun to see that network. But yeah, we're, I don't know, 95% cafe sales.
I want to talk branding, because I feel like Southdown's done a great job at branding. They have become a relative household name. I mean, part of the fact is you have many locations, and in almost any of the major towns you have a location. But there's plenty of towns that have coffee shops that nobody really knows the name of. So what do you think you actively did differently that worked in a marketing sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say a little bit. I think the name's fairly easy to say. Sometimes people confuse it for Southbound. But other than that, it's pretty clear and easy. I tried to keep the branding really clean.
The white and black.
And simple, yeah, like black and white. We throw in some different colors. Stores all look a little different, but I have so many different buildings. It just like never felt like I didn't want to commit to like one color or one thing. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's.
Do you do a lot of active branding or marketing, in the sense of like social media marketing or email marketing or text message marketing?
Yeah, we've over the years, I mean, in the early days, it was just Instagram. Now I feel like that's dried up a bit. I think it's a tough place to advertise. I think it's optimized for people selling products online. And so we're starting to dabble more in newsletters for email marketing, and Facebook like groups, things like that I very much avoided for a long time, but I actually see the impact locally way more. because you're not trying to build a viral following worldwide. If I was selling mail order, if I was trying to, go heavily in that route, but we're so brick and mortar, we're so local that I think it's just better.
An interesting idea coming from the social media space that I was in for so long. An interesting idea would be like that local micro influencer, like a lot of the Long Island Eats kind of places, having them come in and be like, "Hey, I'm trying the new Southdown cappuccino or the new wine bar," and they're not posting for the guy in San Francisco. They're posting for the 24-year-old girl in Mattatuck or whatever. Like that. I mean, that's a little far out east, but say like, I mean, maybe there's a new location coming, but you know what I mean? Like that's where a lot of my wife's like, "Hey, we got to try this restaurant." In fact, did you hear about that coffee shop? I think they last like 7 weeks in Cold Spring Harbor.
7 weeks?
A year or two ago, where they came out with the pumpkin
Oh,
latte
yes,
in the pumpkin.
Yes.
I mean, the thing was exploded because I mean, good or bad, I'm curious here. But like my point is the fact that it was really all based on the fact of like local social media growth.
Yeah, that whole situation I am somewhat up to date on, but I think it's like a very unique set of circumstances there that led to the demise. Influencer marketing can definitely work for some people. I'm a little bit hesitant to spend money on Instagram at all. Like
I'm curious your reservations.
Yeah, I feel like it's just not like I don't think anyone has any attention span on there. I think a lot of the metrics are just like kind of made up. Like you might hit a home run if you have some product and the target demographic like works, but part of our thing is that we're like really awesome coffee roasters and we're really purists about the product and like serious about it. And I don't think that's like a sexy Instagram reel. It's literally like you could see the metrics if we do a post that's like, "Let me tell you about this new coffee." And it's like everyone is signed off after like 6 seconds maximum. Like the attention span is not there. Whereas if I put that in a newsletter, I get a lot more engagement and it's cost me nothing.
Yeah.
Flip side, usually our most successful posts will be like whatever our most like colorful, sugary product is, or maybe the front of a store because people love to like throw a heart on a store that they visit every day.
But not necessarily, like for example, the colorful drink and stuff like that is not necessarily the things you're passionate about. Where you're passionate about a great coffee products, and not that it's anything wrong with it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think our identity is really still geared on that quality, sourcing and roasting, plus customer service. And if I was trying to promote something very like Instagram specific, that might work. I don't know. I'm just negative about it.
Hey, I think a lot of business owners join you. That's why I like hearing their perspective, because I hear both sides of it. I've seen it not work for a lot of people. And I think there's arguments for why that might be the case or why that might not be the case. But there are plenty of businesses that are doing incredibly well without social media presence, and obviously you're one of them.
So I want to shout out, my wife also does the Southdown social media. I handle the wine bar, but so she puts a ton of work into it, and we do post like crazy on there. It's not like we don't do any work on there, but it's just the money spent with the influencers. It's tricky for us.
Yeah, I hear you. Absolutely. I want to hear about your day to day. So owning 7 locations, kind of all over the place on the island. I mean, heading out to Point Lookout or to Port Jeff. Like you're driving half the island at that point.
Yeah.
So what does the day-to-day look like for you? Where like, how do you spend your time? How do you divvy up your time? And how do you manage all the different locations while also keeping your sanity?
That's a good question. I do work pretty much 6 days a week solidly, sometimes 7 days a week, and sometimes I take a little more time off for like a trip or something to break it up because I'll get really sucked in. Since I added the wine bar, my routine has changed a bit because I tend to work here almost every day, at least for setting up service, get home a little later than I used to. So a typical day is wake up, answer emails, kind of clear my inbox. I sometimes do meditation and have a little bit of a morning like meditation thing, although I've been slacking lately, and go to the gym, like try to just like start with a little more physical or mental mind clearing stuff. Again, like clear the inbox, update a spreadsheet or two, do some basic work. And then late morning, let's say like 9, 10 o'clock, I start a visit to shops. I have like an office in Oyster Bay next to my Oyster Bay location. So I'll usually do 1 office day, maybe 1.5 office days. I will visit each location once a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I usually break it up a little bit, do 2 to 4 stores in a trip. And that takes up about half a day. I have schedule blocks where I handle certain things. Like I block out an afternoon for newsletter marketing and all of that, like drafting of stuff that I have to do, planning. I have I have small blocks in the schedule where I just like learned that if I constantly tell people I'm available on certain days or whatever, I end up having a very scattered schedule. So by locking down, like I have every week certain hours blocked out that I don't take meetings or do anything, and that helps me get my stuff done.
I want to hear about customer retention.
Sure.
So coffee shops are I think one of the ideal places for customer retention because it's so routined.
Yeah.
In the sense of if people are going out to buy their coffee every day as opposed to making it at home, they have a specific spot that they typically go to. It's not like, for example, even getting gas, a lot of people go to the same spots, but it's like, oh, I need gas, I'm just going to pull over. A lot of people will be like, I plan to go to this coffee shop in the morning, or I plan to meet my friend and I plan to go to this coffee shop. What are you guys actively doing, do you think, to create a better customer retention rate?
I would say like the product being good does a lot of the heavy lifting, as well as the customer service. I think that is like 40% each, and then you have another 10% of marketing and raising a brand awareness to get new people in. But once they're in, it's really about just having a good product, having fast service, having pleasant and nice staff that's happy to be there. That's the other thing. I think we just like have a great company. We have a great like work environment. A lot of companies our scale might not have an HR team, but we have like an HR director, and we just put a lot into like hearing people's concerns and making sure they feel welcome and respected and they're having a good time at work. So that keeps employees and that keeps customers. A lot of customers come to see their favorite barista too.
That's cool. The workers become friends of the customer, which is very cool. I'd be also curious. I'm curious if location has a lot to do with it too. Finding the right location,
yes,
I would believe has a lot to do with also the fact of like whether or not somebody's going to stop by. If there's no parking lot to a spot, it's going to be hard to justify stopping.
Yeah, and the more locations we have, the more I'm like hyper selective, and it's going to take that much better of a location to make me like get out of the truck, so to speak. I'm not going to come into a place that's at all a push for anyone to park, or if they have to turn off the wrong side of the road. I think I've done really well with the locations I have, but they're all, or not all, but a lot of them are like slightly smaller scale. Like numbers wise, would probably do a little less in most of these. Definitely in some of the locations are like probably half of what Starbucks would want to do for gross sales at any location. But when you're in downtown Oyster Bay, that's okay. Your rent is low. I'm just using this as an example of a successful store, but it's not like a prime location on Huntington. Although Oyster Bay has become more of a prime location. When I first moved in, it was kind of a ghost town. I don't know. You can apply your trade.
Yeah, very interesting. So I also want to hear about the ideals of the company. Like, how do you take your ideal of, obviously every owner wants their employees to have proper customer service, and in order to drive that customer retention, but also just to create a good vibe for the company. How do you relay that to your 100 employees?
So we have a lot of sort of training manuals, handbook type of things, documents that we review, and it's everything from like do you know the location of the mop sink? Do you know the location of the light switches? I mean, it's very extensive for each location to make sure there's like continuity every morning. And
Did you write those out, or did you have a team write those out?
my operations manager, I would say, is like taking the lead. But a lot, we benefit so much from years of growth and good ideas coming in. I can kind of remember when we started doing that, because it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like you want to have kind of a low. I don't love like a hyper corporate environment, and so I get nervous, and it's not my first instinct to have someone like under review with a clipboard every day, especially when you start out. It's not the greatest vibe. But what we were finding is people would be like, this was never communicated to me. I didn't know where the mop sink was, or what, I didn't know how to do XYZ thing. So we just realized, have a checklist. When someone starts, they probably spend 2 or 3 hours just going around the shop, learning everything. When they learn the POS, there's a checklist of things they have to learn about the POS system, et cetera. We do training for the bar that's pretty extensive. Goes out, they train over between like 30 and 90 days to be like fully certified on bar. So there's a lot of checklists.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned your POS system. I'm curious if there's any systems or services or programs that you use to help your business run more efficiently.
We use Square. A lot of people are, partial to their service or think one is worse than the other. I think Square overall seems pretty good. I don't like that they take a lot of my money, but I also don't think.
What is it up to? Is it up to like 4% these days?
So I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I've negotiated them down a bit. As you grow, I think, and you gain some scale.
Like an enterprise level. Yeah.
So that's another reason why I think I might be more open to staying with them. And for the restaurant, maybe Square for restaurants isn't quite as good as Toast or something, but I think they're probably pretty similar. Analytics are great. I mean, I've spent a good part of today just looking over analytics on Square. And
what type of analytics?
Sales trends, category sales, item sales, stuff like that. Specifically, this morning I was looking at like wine bar models. I've actually been using ChatGPT a ton lately, so I was like, plugging in our numbers and comparing them to like what a typical sales breakdown is at a wine bar. And there's slight differences of like sales breakdown at a wine bar, sales breakdown at a restaurant, and we're kind of sitting like somewhere in between. I think in Long Island, like wine bars, like not as common a concept or as easy to execute as like, let's say in the city, where someone might say, let's just go out for a glass of wine before dinner. Here, when we first opened, it was very clear that people wanted more food. So now we've like been doing more food. So we kind of like sit between the two.
Very interesting. Speaking of ChatGPT, I use it every single day, man.
Okay.
I think it is one of the best tools that I think, as a business owner, if you're not utilizing it, there's so much left on the table. I use it for business related and not business related. I use it for everything. In fact, I just upgraded to the paid version of it because I started hitting the max daily limit of it.
I hit the max very quickly. I definitely upgraded. I wasn't really on it as much until this year.
Agreed. Yeah.
But it's super powerful, and I mean I'll upload a P&L to like analyze this year's P&L, tell us our strengths and weaknesses, and just have conversations with it, and it's super exciting. Like I get excited thinking about it.
I mean, I agree with you. It's super nerdy of me, but I love that stuff, man.
Yeah.
I want to wrap it up with talking about kind of going back to customer retention, but also just relationship with customer, and talk about reviews.
Sure.
So coffee it can be very subjective taste. Some people like it really dark. Some people like it really light. Some people like it almost burnt tasting. Some people, like it more green tasting, and some people want a ton of sugar, no sugar, milk, crazy, black. That being said, it's almost like art in the sense of, or the quote, quality is subjective.
Yeah.
So when people hold coffee as a part of their daily routine, using it every single day, there are sure to be people that be like, I don't particularly like your coffee. And which then leads to potentially bad reviews or something like that. Have you ever seen a review that's influenced your decision making? Say, hey, we should change this or we should change that. And how do you handle bad reviews?
Oh, yeah, reviews are tough. I think that there are always a certain percentage that are true. All of the 5-star reviews are true, and then all of the bad reviews, you have to sort of weed through them. And I think there's a lot of people who just don't get it, and you just have to brush it off. There's some people who are mad about stuff before they walk in. And then every once in a while, there's a legitimate incident where like someone on your staff messed up and somebody's upset and you have to deal with it. So I guess it's like a case by case basis. I might be drifting a little from your original question here, but I would say like the biggest challenge with reviews is just that they come in all day, every day. So there's never a day off from reviews. And it's like sometimes something happens and it like hits you, like a punch in the face that you're just reeling from the whole day, and you can't. This is why meditation practice is good, because like you need to be able to compartmentalize. And so that's what I don't like about it. Just as a business owner, it's this attack vector that's open all day.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm sure that there are probably some parameters that you could set where you don't see them necessarily every day. You say, hey, I'm going to check in Tuesdays at 4 p.m. And then hypothetically, if you get some bad reviews, then it's like, okay, I'm only feeling bad until 5 p.m., but I'm not feeling bad every day of the week at least.
Yeah.
But I assume, you guys are doing great and your coffee's great, that you're not getting a ton of bad reviews. But again, everybody has a bad day. And
yeah, sometimes there's like bad reviews that actually like sort of win you over. And like my wife and I, in the very early days of Southdown, someone wrote a review of us and they said, slow as mud. And we still use it when we go to a place. If a place is slow, we just kind of whisper to each other in line. So there's a small silver lining.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I want to hear, for the last thing that we're going to talk about, is what's next for you? What do you see next for Southdown or Otherside? What do you plan to do next?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be a great year for Otherside. I think it's catching on. A lot of people are figuring out that we're here. That was a whole separate challenge. Obviously, could talk all about it, but so next here is just becoming everybody's regular spot. And then for Southdown, I don't know, selective, got to find the right next location. We're going to take a year to chill, which I like to take a year off from any conversations. And I think it would be cool to do a drive-through if we could figure it out. But, that's TBD.
I think that's a great idea. Ever since I'm from Northwood, and ever since some of the drive-through locations have opened up around my house, my wife's always, stopping for drive-through coffee. Even if it's not always the best coffee, it's super convenient. And as somebody who leaves work at 5:30 a.m., that convenience is super important.
Yeah.
So that'd be a really interesting idea to explore.
Yeah, Long Island's a big car culture, and so I would love to do something that was like a little bit of both. That had a drive-through that was like kind of out of sight on the building, and then some picnic tables, and like if I could take over like an old gas station or something like that, where it's like has a little bit of a vibe to it in the front. But this is just a dream.
Yeah.
No specifics.
Well, we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what's to come. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jacob.
so
Yeah.
much. If you are a business owner or you know any business owners that you think would be a good fit for this podcast, please reach out. Thank you so much as a listener for taking the time to listen. Thank you again to Mark for taking the time.
You.